Hey guys, tonight we begin with Japanese noblewomen painting their teeth black and shaving off their eyebrows. While you might imagine ancient beauty rituals as elegant, the reality was toxic iron slurry corroding your mouth and erasing your face to look less human. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture yourself as Lady Murasaki in Harriet, Kyoto, year 1008. You are preparing for an imperial court appearance, and your attendants are bringing the Ohaguro set. Lacquered boxes containing iron filings soaked in tea, rice wine, and plant tannins. The mixture smells like rotting metal and vinegar. It tastes worse, but you open your mouth anyway, because blackened teeth are the mark of beauty, status, and marriageability. White teeth are for peasants, children, and prostitutes. You are nobility, so you paint your teeth the colour of midnight. Your attendants apply the mixture with a small brush, coating each tooth carefully. The liquid is cold against your teeth, acidic against your gums. You hold your mouth open, trying not to swallow, fighting your gag reflex as the metallic taste spreads across your tongue. After several minutes, the coating dries to a hard black lacquer. You close your mouth, run your tongue over your newly blackened teeth. Feel the slightly rough texture of the coating. You look in your bronze mirror. Your teeth are completely black, creating a dark void where your smile should be. Combined with your shaved eyebrows, replaced by painted dots high on your forehead, your face painted white with lead powder, your blackened teeth, you look simultaneously beautiful and alien. This is perfection by Heian standards. This is what every noble woman aspires to achieve. But let's talk about what that black mixture is actually doing to your mouth, because the beauty comes at a biological cost. The Ohaguro solution is primarily iron acetate, iron filings dissolved in acetic acid, vinegar along with tannins from tea or gallnuts. When applied to teeth, it creates a chemical reaction that stains the enamel deep black. According to dental historian Dr. Takashi Fujita at Tokyo Dental College, Ohaguro solutions typically contained crushed iron nails or iron powder, soaked in sake or tea for weeks until the iron oxidized and dissolved. The resulting liquid had a pH around 3 to 4, highly acidic, similar to orange juice or soda. Applying this to your teeth regularly causes enamel erosion over time. The tannins in the mixture do provide some antibacterial properties. According to research published in the Journal of Oral Science, the iron tannin compounds in Ohaguro can inhibit growth of certain oral bacteria, potentially reducing tooth decay. This is why some scholars argue Ohaguro was actually protective, despite the acidic application process. The black coating may have sealed teeth against decay, causing bacteria, but the application process itself is damaging. You are coating your teeth with acidic liquid multiple times per week because the black coating wears off with eating and drinking. Each application etches away a tiny layer of enamel. Over years, this causes visible damage, thinning enamel, increased sensitivity, gum recession where the acidic liquid contacts soft tissue. The smell is notorious. Iron acetate has a distinctive metallic, vinegary odor that permeates your breath. Contemporary accounts describe the smell as like rusted nails in vinegar or rotting iron. You smell this constantly, when you breathe, when you speak, when you eat. Everyone around you smells it too. But this isn't considered unpleasant in Heian society. It is the smell of status, of beauty properly maintained. Let's examine how you learned to apply Ohaguro, because this is a skill taught to girls as part of their preparation for adulthood and marriage. You are 12 years old, daughter of a court noble. Your mother is teaching you the ritual of tooth blackening for the first time. The Ohaguro set is brought out lacquered boxes containing the iron solution, brushes, a bronze mirror, cloths for wiping excess. Your mother explains that you'll start applying Ohaguro regularly now that you are approaching marriageable age. Blackened teeth signal that you are no longer a child, that you are ready for adult responsibilities, including marriage and childbearing. Your mother demonstrates first. She opens the box containing the black liquid, and the smell hits you, sharp, metallic, making your eyes water. She dips a small flat brush into the liquid, carefully coating her own teeth. The brush strokes are methodical, starting with the front teeth and working back to the molars. She keeps her mouth open wide, lips pulled back in a grimace that looks painful. After coating all visible teeth, she holds the position for several minutes while the liquid dries. You can see her fighting the urge to swallow, to close her mouth, to spit out the terrible taste. Finally, she closes her mouth carefully, wipes away excess liquid that is dripped onto her lips and chin, and examines the result in the mirror. Her teeth are uniformly black, no white showing anywhere. Now it is your turn. Your mother hands you the brush. You dip it into the liquid, hesitating before bringing it to your mouth. The smell is overwhelming up close. You touch the brush to your front tooth and immediately want to pull away. The taste is as bad as you feared, metallic and sour and wrong. Your mother encourages you to continue. You coat all your front teeth, gagging slightly at the taste. The liquid burns where it touches your gums. Your mother corrects your technique. Broader strokes, more coverage. Don't miss the edges. You try again, fighting nausea. When your teeth are fully coated, you have to hold your mouth open while it dries. Your jaw aches. Saliva pools in your mouth, and you desperately want to swallow, but can't without disrupting the coating. Tears stream from your eyes from the chemical fumes and the strain of holding position. Finally, it is done. You close your mouth and immediately taste the coating on your tongue. Bitter, metallic, coating the inside of your mouth. You look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. The black teeth make you look older, stranger, less like the child you were this morning. Your mother smiles with her black teeth and tells you you are beautiful. You'll apply this mixture every few days for the rest of your life, or at least until you are no longer trying to maintain your status and beauty. This is your introduction to adult womanhood in Heian, Japan. According to anthropologist Dr. Emiko Onuki-Terney at the University of Wisconsin, tooth blackening rituals in Japan marked important life transitions: puberty, marriage, sometimes childbirth. The practice signaled change in social status from child to adult, from unmarried to married. The physical transformation of the body through blackened teeth made the social transformation visible and permanent. Now let's talk about the eyebrow shaving, because Ohaguro was just one part of the complete aesthetic transformation. You are a Heian noblewoman, and you've shaved off your eyebrows completely where eyebrows should be. There is only white painted skin. High on your forehead, you've painted 2 round or oval spots of black ink. Artificial eyebrows called hikimayu, positioned several inches above where natural eyebrows grow. The effect is profoundly alienating to modern eyes. Human faces are designed to have eyebrows. They're crucial for facial recognition and expression. Without them, faces look incomplete, mask-like, disturbing. The painted replacement eyebrows high on the forehead don't compensate because they're in the wrong position and don't move with facial expressions. Your face becomes a painted surface rather than an expressive human face. Why do this? According to art historian Dr. Midori Wakakua at Gakushuin University, the aesthetic ideal of Heian aristocracy emphasized stillness, composure, and refinement. Natural eyebrows were considered too animalistic, too expressive, too revealing of emotion. Removing them and replacing with painted dots created a serene, unchanging face that didn't betray feelings. The perfect aristocratic mask. The eyebrow removal process is painful. You use tweezers to pluck out every hair, or you might use a razor to shave the area smooth. Either way, it hurts, especially the first few times before your skin toughens. The area becomes inflamed, red, sometimes infected if tools aren't clean. You have to maintain this constantly plucking new hair growth every few days to keep the area completely bare. The painted eyebrows require skill to apply symmetrically. You use sumi ink, the same ink used for calligraphy, and a fine brush to paint 2 matching spots high on your forehead. The placement matters. Too low, and they look like natural eyebrows in the wrong position. Too high, and you look bizarre even by Heian standards. The shape matters too. The ideal is a soft oval or crescent, not too sharp or angular, combined with the white face powder, made from lead, which we'll discuss, the blackened teeth, and the shaved eyebrows with painted replacements. You achieve the complete Heian aristocratic look. You are recognizable as human but distinctly other, a perfected stylized version of humanity that emphasizes status and cultural sophistication over natural appearance. Let's examine the white face powder in detail, because it is the foundation for the entire aesthetic and it is slowly poisoning you. You are applying oshiroe, white powder made from ground seashells, or more commonly for aristocrats, white lead powder. This is the same substance that killed European aristocrats with their lead-based white makeup. You are coating your face, neck, and exposed skin with toxic heavy metal, reapplying it daily. For years, the powder is mixed with water into a paste and applied thickly to create a uniform white surface. According to chemical analysis by Dr. Kunio Yoshizaki at Kitasato University, Heian period oshiroe samples contain high concentrations of lead carbonate and lead hydroxide. When applied to skin, lead is absorbed through pores and accumulates in bones and organs. Lead poisoning is insidious because it is cumulative. You don't notice symptoms immediately, but over years of daily application, lead accumulates. Early symptoms include fatigue, headaches, muscle pain, abdominal cramping. Later symptoms include cognitive impairment, personality changes, nerve damage, kidney damage. Severe lead poisoning causes seizures, coma, death. You are probably experiencing chronic low-level lead poisoning if you've been using oshiroe for years. You might have unexplained aches, digestive problems, periods where you feel mentally foggy. You probably don't connect these symptoms to your makeup because everyone uses it, and the symptoms develop so slowly they seem like normal aging or constitutional weakness. The application process itself is laborious. You start with bare skin. You've washed your face with water and perhaps rice bran powder as a gentle abrasive. Your skin is clean, but you can see your natural complexion, which is yellowish or olive-toned, not the pure white that is considered beautiful. You mix the white powder with water into a smooth paste. Using your hands or a brush, you apply this thickly to your face, starting from the forehead and working down. You coat every visible area: face, neck, exposed chest if your clothing allows. The goal is complete coverage with no natural skin tone showing through. The paste is cold and wet against your skin. It has a slight chalky smell. As it dries, your skin feels tight and stiff. Your face becomes a white mask. You can feel the weight of the powder on your skin, can feel it cracking slightly when you move your facial muscles to speak or eat. Over this white base, you apply rouge to your lips. Though lips are sometimes left pale, and the painted eyebrows. The contrast between pure white skin, black teeth, and painted eyebrows creates the desired aesthetic, otherworldly, refined, distinctly aristocratic. But your skin is suffering. The lead powder clogs pores, causing breakouts. The daily application and removal damages your skin barrier, leading to dryness and sensitivity. Over time, your natural skin tone might become paler from lack of sun exposure. Aristocratic women stay indoors almost constantly, and possibly from chronic lead exposure affecting blood vessels in the skin. According to dermatological research by Dr. Masahiro Takahashi at Keio University, Analysis of Heian period female remains shows skin damage consistent with heavy cosmetic use, poor scarring, changes in dermal structure, and bone lead levels elevated compared to male remains from the same period. The pursuit of beauty was literally toxic. Now let's examine a typical day in your life as a Heian noblewoman, because the aesthetic transformation is just one part of a highly controlled lifestyle. You wake in your section of the aristocratic residence, surrounded by screens and curtains that create privacy within shared space. You sleep in your clothes, multiple layers of silk robes, junihito or 12-layer robe, that are too complex to remove and reapply easily. Your attendants help you with morning preparations. First, they arrange your hair long, straight black, ideally reaching the floor when you are seated. Your hair has never been cut. Cutting hair is done only in cases of severe illness or when entering religious life. It is your glory, your beauty, requiring hours of maintenance. Attendants comb it with wooden combs, applying oils to keep it sleek and shiny. Next comes the cosmetic transformation. The oshiroi, white powder, is mixed and applied to your face and neck. This takes significant time to achieve even coverage. Then your eyebrows, if any hair has grown back since last plucking, it must be removed. Then the painted hikimayu dots high on your forehead. Then the ohaguro application to blacken your teeth, which you do yourself because it requires holding your mouth in uncomfortable positions. The entire morning preparation takes 2 to 3 hours. By the time you are properly painted and dressed, the morning is half over. Your day is spent in extremely limited physical space. As an aristocratic woman, you don't leave the house except for major ceremonies or religious pilgrimages. You spend your life in inner rooms, separated from men by screens and curtains. When men visit, they don't see you directly. You speak from behind screens, with perhaps a sleeve or fan visible as the only indication of your presence. Your activities are highly refined and sedentary. You might practice calligraphy, write poetry, read literature, works like Genji Monogatari or Pillow Book, play musical instruments, create small crafts. You might observe nature through gaps in screens, moon viewing, snow viewing, seasonal flower appreciation, but you don't engage in physical activity or practical work. Servants handle all practical matters. Your movements are slow and deliberate. The multiple layers of robes are heavy and restrictive. Moving quickly is impossible and would be considered vulgar. You glide rather than walk, your robes trailing behind you. You sit or recline almost constantly because standing for long periods in those heavy robes is exhausting. Your speech is refined, indirect, heavily coded. You don't speak plainly about anything. Everything is allusion, poetic reference, delicate suggestion. Direct communication is considered crude. You communicate emotional states through the color combinations of your robes, through poetry exchanged on particular types of paper, through the angle at which you position your fan. Your contact with the outside world is minimal and mediated. You hear about events through servants and attendants. You might receive letters from relatives or suitors, but you don't have direct interaction with most people. You exist in a bubble of aristocratic refinement, insulated from the practical realities of the world outside your screens. This is the life that blackened teeth, shaved eyebrows, and white-painted face are designed for. You are not trying to look attractive for everyday interaction. You barely have everyday interaction. You are trying to achieve an aesthetic ideal that is appreciated in highly specific contexts. Brief glimpses through screens, formal ceremonies where you are observed at a distance, and the romantic imagination of potential suitors who compose poetry about your beauty without having clearly seen your face. According to historian Dr. William McCullough at UC Berkeley, Heian aristocratic women lived in extreme physical and social restriction that was considered appropriate to their high status. The more restricted and secluded a woman, the higher her status. the cosmetic transformation into a painted otherworldly being reinforced this separation from normal human life. Let's examine the origins of tooth blackening in Japan, because it didn't start as an aristocratic practice. According to archaeological evidence analysed by Dr. Kazuhiko Watanabe at the National Museum of Japanese History, tooth blackening appears in Japan as early as the Kofun period, 3rd, 7th centuries CS. Early examples are associated with both men and women, particularly those of high status or in specific ritual contexts. The practice likely had multiple origins and meanings. Some scholars argue it originated as protection against tooth decay. The iron tannin compounds do have antibacterial properties. Others suggest it was borrowed from continental Asian cultures where tooth modification, blackening or filing indicated various social statuses. Still others propose it had ritual or religious significance related to coming-of-age ceremonies. By the Heian period, 794 to 1185 CA, tooth blackening had become strongly associated with aristocratic women, particularly married women. The practice signaled adult status and marriageability. According to literary sources like Genji Monogatari and Makura no Soshi Pillow Book, blackened teeth were considered essential to female beauty among the court aristocracy. The aesthetic logic is complex and culturally specific. In Heian culture, darkness and concealment were associated with beauty, mystery, and refinement. Bright white teeth were considered too visible, too revealing, too animalistic. Blackened teeth created a void in the face, making the mouth less distinct, contributing to the overall aesthetic of a pale, expressionless face where features were minimized or concealed. There may also have been class distinction motivations. Peasants couldn't afford the time or materials for regular tooth blackening. Their teeth remained natural white. By blackening teeth, aristocrats visually distinguished themselves from lower classes. The practice became a marker of status that was immediately visible when you smiled or spoke and couldn't be easily faked. The practice persisted for centuries. During the Edo period, 1603 to 1867, tooth blackening remained common among married women across various social classes, not just aristocrats. According to demographic research by Dr. Eiko Ikegami at the New School, by the 18th century, tooth blackening was practiced by samurai, class women, merchant, class women, and some rural women, always associated with marriage and adult status. The end of tooth blackening came relatively recently. In the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, Japan rapidly modernized and westernized. The government actively discouraged traditional practices considered backwards or uncivilized by Western standards. In 1870, the government banned tooth blackening for members of the imperial family. The practice gradually declined as Western beauty standards, emphasizing white teeth, spread through Japanese society. By the early 20th century, tooth blackening was rare except in remote rural areas and among some traditional families. The last generation of women to practice tooth blackening regularly were those born in the late 19th century. Some lived into the mid-20th century, meaning there are photographs of tooth-blackened women from as recently as the 1950s to 60s, though by then it was considered an archaic curiosity. According to oral histories collected by Dr. Akiko Matsumura at Ochanomizu University, women who practiced tooth blackening in the early 20th century reported feeling embarrassed about it as Western-influenced beauty standards spread. What had been a mark of status and beauty for centuries suddenly became seen as ugly and primitive. This rapid aesthetic reversal shows how culturally constructed beauty standards are. Now let's examine specific documented cases of women who practiced tooth blackening, because individual stories make the practice more visceral. Lady Murasaki Shikibu, author of Genji Monogatari, the tale of Genji around 1008 almost certainly practiced tooth blackening, and the full aristocratic aesthetic Her diary, Murasaki Shikibu Nikki, includes descriptions of aristocratic women's appearances and beauty practices. In one entry, Murasaki describes another court lady. Her teeth were beautifully blackened, her painted eyebrows like the wings of a moth, her powdered face like new fallen snow. This description treats blackened teeth as an essential element of beauty, equivalent to other aesthetic refinements. Murasaki herself was married around age 20 to Fujiwara no Nobutaka, a much older court noble. As a married aristocratic woman, she would have adopted the full aesthetic transformation: blackened teeth, shaved eyebrows, white painted face, as both status marker and beauty practice. Another documented case is Tomo Guzan, a female samurai of the late 12th century. According to the tale of the hike, Tomo was especially beautiful, with white skin, long hair, and charming features. But she was also a warrior who fought in battles. Whether Tomo practiced tooth blackening is unclear from historical records, but if she was from aristocratic or high samurai class, she likely did during peacetime, even if she suspended the practice during military campaigns. The contradiction is striking. A woman trained in combat and archery who killed enemies in battle, also potentially engaging in the delicate aesthetic practice of tooth blackening and eyebrow removal. This shows how these beauty practices weren't necessarily associated with passivity or weakness, but rather with specific cultural status markers that cross different types of female roles. Moving forward to the Edo period, we have more documentation, including visual records. Ukiyo-e prints frequently depict women with blackened teeth, though the artistic convention often minimizes or subtly indicates the blackness rather than showing it dramatically. Artists seemed uncertain how to represent blackened teeth in ways that read as beautiful to viewers. There are photographs from the Meiji period showing women with blackened teeth. These are some of the last practitioners. One famous photograph from around 1870 shows a samurai class family where the mother has fully blackened teeth, while her daughters, representing the younger generation embracing westernization, have natural white teeth. The image captures the generational transition away from the practice. According to photographic historian Dr. Melissa Miles at the University of Tasmania, these late photographs of tooth blackened women were often taken by Western photographers who found the practice exotic and shocking. The photographs were marketed to Western audiences as examples of strange Japanese customs. This Western gaze contributed to Japanese embarrassment about the practice and accelerated its decline. Let's examine the specific preparation of ohaguro solution in detail, because the chemistry is fascinating and disgusting. You are preparing a new batch of tooth blackening liquid. The process takes weeks. You start with iron, typically old nails, iron filings, or pieces of scrap iron. These are placed in a ceramic container. You add a liquid medium-sake rice wine, tea, or vinegar work best. The iron must be fully submerged. The container is covered and left in a warm place for several weeks to several months. During this time, the iron slowly oxidizes and dissolves into the liquid. The oxygen in the liquid and in air that enters the container reacts with iron to form iron oxide, and eventually iron acetate if using vinegar, or iron tannate if using tea. The liquid gradually turns dark brown to black and develops that characteristic metallic smell. After sufficient time, the liquid is strained to remove solid iron pieces. What remains is a concentrated solution of dissolved iron compounds. This is the base of your ohaguro. To this base, you add tannin-rich materials to darken the color and add preservative properties. Crushed gallnuts, abnormal growths on oak trees caused by wasp larvae, very high in tannins, are common. Tea leaves, especially green tea, work well. These are steeped in the iron solution, adding tannins that react with the iron to create iron tannate compounds that are deeply black. The final solution is thick, black, with a strong smell of iron and vinegar or tea. It is stored in sealed containers to prevent evaporation and contamination. Each household or woman might have slightly different recipes, passed down through families or shared among women, creating variations in exact color, thickness, and durability of the final tooth coating. According to chemical analysis by Dr. Koji Sakamoto at Waseda University, historical Ohaguro solutions show remarkable consistency in their basic components: iron, tannins, acidic medium, but variation in ratios and additional ingredients. Some recipes include honey or sugar to make the taste slightly less terrible. Others include fragrant herbs to mask the smell. These modifications show women trying to make the unpleasant process slightly more bearable. The application technique requires practice. Too little solution and the coverage is uneven with natural tooth color showing through. Unacceptable. Too much and the excess drips, staining your lips and face. The brush strokes must be smooth and even. You start with front teeth because they're most visible, then work back to molars. The back teeth are harder to reach and coat evenly, requiring you to hold your mouth in awkward positions. After coating, you must hold very still while the solution dries. Any movement of your mouth, any swallowing, any contact between your tongue and teeth can smear the coating before it sets. This takes several minutes of uncomfortable stillness, fighting your body's natural reflexes to swallow accumulated saliva or close your mouth. Once dry, the coating is fairly durable, but not permanent. It wears away with eating, drinking, and the natural acidity of saliva. You need to reapply every few days to maintain consistent blackness. This means the process of mixing solution, applying, drying, cleaning up with all its unpleasant smells and tastes is a regular recurring part of your life. Some women reapplied daily for perfect consistency. Others did it every 3 to 5 days as the coating visibly wore down. The frequency depended on how much you ate and drank, how acidic your saliva was, and how perfectionist you were about maintaining the aesthetic. Now let's talk about the experience of eating with blackened teeth, because the coating affects everything about how you consume food and drink. The Ohaguro coating creates a barrier between your teeth and food. This might seem protective, but it actually makes eating more difficult and unpleasant. The coating has texture slightly rough, not smooth like natural enamel. Food particles catch on this rough surface. Rice, vegetables, meat, everything leaves residue on your blackened teeth. You can feel debris accumulating as you eat, but you can't easily clean it away without disrupting the black coating. The coating also affects taste. The iron tanning compounds have strong flavor that doesn't fully dissipate even after the coating dries. Everything you eat is tinged with metallic, slightly bitter taste. Sweet foods taste less sweet. Savory foods taste metallic. Your palate is never fully clean. Hot foods and drinks are particularly problematic. Heat can slightly soften the coating, causing it to become sticky and more likely to transfer to food. You might notice black residue on food after biting, coating coming off onto rice or vegetables. This requires careful eating techniques to minimize coating loss. According to food historian Dr. Naomichi Ishiji at Kikuman Institute, Heian aristocratic cuisine was designed partly around the practicalities of eating with blackened teeth and the restrictive clothing of the period. Foods were cut into small, delicate pieces. Meals were eaten slowly and carefully. Messy or chewy foods were avoided in formal contexts. The aesthetic of refinement extended to making eating itself a controlled, deliberate practice. You probably develop specific techniques for eating that minimize coating disruption. Small bites, careful chewing, avoiding biting directly with your front teeth, rinsing your mouth with tea or water between courses to clear debris without removing coating. These techniques become second nature over time. But despite all precautions, you regularly need to clean your teeth, which means removing coating and reapplying. After meals, you might rinse your mouth vigorously with water or tea, scrubbing with a finger or soft cloth to remove food particles. This damages or removes the black coating, so you reapply. The cycle of application, wearing away, cleaning, reapplication continues endlessly. The coating also affects your breath beyond just the smell of the solution itself. The rough surface traps bacteria and food particles, potentially causing bad breath despite the antibacterial properties of the iron tannin compounds. According to dental research by Dr. Hiroshi Ogawa at Niigata University, while Ohaguro had some antibacterial benefits, it wasn't a perfect protection against oral disease. Women who practiced tooth blackening still experienced gum disease, cavities especially at the gum line where coating didn't reach, and other dental problems. Let's examine the psychological experience of the aesthetic transformation, because changing your face so dramatically affects how you see yourself and how you relate to your own body. You are a young woman experiencing the full aristocratic aesthetic for the first time. You've shaved your eyebrows, painted dots high on your forehead, covered your face in white lead powder, and blackened your teeth. You look in the bronze mirror and barely recognize yourself. The face looking back at you is a mask. Your natural features are obscured under white paint. Your eyebrows are gone, replaced by painted marks in the wrong position. Your teeth, when you open your mouth, are uniformly black. Your smile creates a dark void. You look beautiful by cultural standards. Your mother, your attendants, everyone around you confirms that you look refined and elegant, but you also look alien, inhuman, disturbing. There is cognitive dissonance between knowing you are supposed to find this beautiful and your instinctive unease at seeing a face that doesn't look quite human. Over time, this transformed face becomes your identity. You stop thinking of your natural face as your real face. Your natural face is what you look like in private moments when the paint is removed. But almost no one sees you that way. Your public face, your social face, is the painted mask. That becomes who you are. This creates a split between public and private self. The private self has white teeth, natural eyebrows, natural skin tone. She is the person you are alone or with intimate servants. The public self is the painted aristocrat with black teeth. She is who you are in social contexts, even though she looks nothing like the private self. According to psychological anthropology research by Dr. Taki Lebra at the University of Hawaii, this split between omote public face and yura, private self, is deeply embedded in Japanese culture. The aesthetic transformation of high and noblewoman is an extreme version of this. The public face is literally a painted construction that conceals the private self entirely. The transformation also affects how you understand beauty and ugliness. You are taught from childhood that blackened teeth are beautiful and white teeth are ugly. Through repeated exposure and social reinforcement, you internalize this. You genuinely feel aesthetic pleasure looking at blackened teeth and aesthetic displeasure at white teeth, even though to modern eyes or to people from different cultures, the reverse would be true. This shows how deeply cultural beauty standards become embodied. You are not just intellectually agreeing that black teeth are attractive while secretly thinking they're gross. You actually experience them as beautiful at a visceral, aesthetic level. Your aesthetic response has been shaped by culture to the point that the culturally appropriate response feels natural and instinctive. But there might also be moments of doubt or dissonance. Maybe when you see a child with natural white teeth and feel a fleeting sense that there is something appealing about that naturalness. Maybe when you are sick and can't maintain the cosmetic routine, and you notice feeling relieved to have your face unpainted. These moments might be quickly suppressed or rationalized away, but they suggest that the cultural programming isn't always complete or uncontested. Now, let's examine the social consequences of not practicing tooth blackening if you were supposed to. You are an aristocratic woman who, for whatever reason, health problems, personal preference, rebellion, has refused to blacken your teeth. What happened? First, social judgment. Other aristocratic women look at your white teeth with disapproval or pity. You are failing to meet basic standards of grooming and beauty. It is similar to how modern Western societies might judge someone who never bathes or wears clean clothes. You are violating fundamental hygiene and appearance norms. Your marriage prospects plummet. Aristocratic men expect their wives to conform to aesthetic standards. White teeth mark you as lower class, childish, or socially incompetent. Matchmakers have a hard time finding anyone of appropriate status willing to marry you. Your family is embarrassed and pressures you to conform. You might be excluded from court ceremonies or social gatherings. Etiquette requires proper appearance, and you are not properly appearing. Invitations stop coming. Your social circle shrinks. You are isolated not through active punishment, but through passive exclusion. Nobody wants to be associated with someone who can't or won't maintain appearances. Your children might face social consequences. If you are already married when you stop blackening your teeth, your failure to maintain standards might reflect poorly on your children. Daughters especially might find their marriage prospects damaged because potential in-laws question what kind of household they come from if the mother doesn't even maintain proper aesthetic standards. According to social historian Dr. Hitomi Tonomura at the University of Michigan, social conformity pressure in Heian aristocratic society was intense. Status was maintained through precise observance of etiquette, aesthetic standards, and social performance. Failure to maintain these standards could result in loss of status, social exclusion, and economic consequences as patronage networks withdrew support. The pressure was especially intense for women because women's status was more precarious than men's. Men had official court ranks and positions. Women's status was largely dependent on their relationships to men, fathers, husbands, sons, and their ability to maintain proper aristocratic behavior and appearance. A woman who didn't maintain appropriate appearance was failing at her primary social function, so the choice to not blacken your teeth wasn't really a choice in any meaningful sense. The social consequences were too severe. You blackened your teeth because refusing to do so would make your life and your family's lives substantially worse. The practice was maintained not just through aesthetic preference, but through social coercion. Let's talk about the historical moment when tooth blackening began to decline, because the shift is abrupt and telling. The Meiji Restoration in 1868 marks the beginning of rapid Japanese modernization and westernization. The government, desperate to prove Japan was civilized by Western standards, began actively reforming traditional practices considered backwards. In 1870, the government banned tooth blackening and eyebrow shaving for the imperial family. This was symbolic. If the imperial family doesn't practice it, it is no longer the mark of higher status. The aesthetic standard has officially changed. The ban extended to aristocratic and samurai classes. Women of these classes were encouraged, sometimes required, to abandon traditional aesthetic practices and adopt more Western appearance standards. Natural eyebrows, white teeth, less dramatic face powder became the new markers of modernity and sophistication. For women who had practiced tooth blackening their entire lives, this reversal must have been psychologically jarring. What you've spent decades learning to see as beautiful is suddenly declared ugly. What you've paid for with pain and chemical exposure is now worthless or worse, a mark of backwardness. Photographs from this transitional period show this generational divide visually. Older women retain blackened teeth because changing after a lifetime seems pointless or impossible. Younger women adopt natural teeth, embracing westernization. Middle-aged women are caught between some transition, some don't. According to modernization research by Dr. Carol Gluck at Columbia University, the Meiji period was characterized by rapid, sometimes violent cultural transformation. Traditional practices were stigmatized as feudal relics. Western practices were promoted as progressive and civilized. This created enormous generational and class tension as different groups responded differently to pressure to westernize. For teeth specifically, Western dentistry arrived in Japan in the late 19th century. Dentists trained in Western methods promoted tooth cleaning, white enamel, and cavity prevention, all antithetical to tooth blackening. They framed ohaguro as destructive to dental health. ignoring the antibacterial benefits and focusing on the enamel damage from acidic application. Western-style education for women, which expanded in the Meiji period, taught new aesthetic standards. Girls learned that white teeth were healthy and attractive, that natural eyebrows were necessary for facial expression, that heavy face powder was old-fashioned. Each generation grew up with different aesthetic programming than the previous generation. By the 1920s to 30s, tooth blackening was rare enough to be noteworthy. By the 1950s, it had essentially vanished except in very remote rural areas or among the very elderly. The practice that had persisted for over a millennium disappeared within 2 or 3 generations. The rapidity of this change proves how culturally constructed beauty standards are. Japanese aesthetic sense didn't fundamentally change in some biological way between 1860 and 1920, but cultural standards, social pressure, and symbols of status changed completely. What had been beautiful became ugly, simply because the cultural context that gave it meaning disappeared. Now let's examine similar body modification practices in other cultures, because Japan wasn't alone in using dramatic physical transformation as status marker or beauty ideal. Foot binding in China created tiny, deformed feet that made walking difficult or impossible. Neck rings in Thailand and Myanmar gradually elongated women's necks. Lip plates in various African cultures stretched lower lips to enormous size. Cranial deformation in ancient Mesoamerica reshaped infant skulls into elongated forms. All of these practices share certain features. They're permanent or semi-permanent body modifications. They're painful or physically damaging. They mark social status or beauty ideals. They're maintained through cultural transmission and social pressure. They're typically applied to women more than men, and they seem bizarre or disturbing to people from cultures that don't practice them. Tooth blackening is actually among the less extreme of these practices. It is reversible. If you stop applying the coating, your teeth gradually return to natural colour, thou with possible enamel damage. It doesn't cause permanent physical disability the way foot binding or extreme neck elongation do. The health risks are moderate rather than severe. But tooth blackening is psychologically intense because it affects the face, the primary site of human recognition and communication. Modifying feet or necks is dramatic, but they're not constantly visible in face-to-face interaction. Blackened teeth are right there, impossible to miss when someone smiles or speaks. According to comparative cultural anthropology research by Dr. David Howes at Concordia University, body modification practices often target body parts that are culturally significant sites of meaning. In cultures where feet have erotic or status significance, foot binding emerges. In cultures where necks symbolize beauty or identity, neck elongation appears. In Japan, the mouth and teeth had particular cultural significance related to speech, expression, and propriety, making them apt targets for modification. The comparative perspective also shows that tooth blackening isn't the strangest dental modification humans have practiced. Various cultures have filed teeth into points, extracted healthy teeth to create gaps, inlaid teeth with jade or gold, or stained teeth red or black. The human capacity for using teeth as aesthetic or cultural canvas is remarkable, but all these practices raise ethical questions about cultural relativism versus universal human rights. Should we respect cultural practices that cause pain and health damage, or should we condemn them as human rights violations, regardless of cultural context? These questions become especially complex when the practices are maintained partly through coercion and social pressure rather than purely voluntary choice. Let's examine the artistic representations of tooth-blackened women in Japanese art, because visual culture both reflected and shaped aesthetic ideals. Yamato paintings from the Heian period depict aristocratic women with blackened teeth. The artistic convention shows teeth as simple black lines when mouths are slightly open, creating striking visual contrast against white painted faces. In these paintings, the aesthetic ideal is clear: women with perfectly still, expressionless faces, blackened teeth barely visible behind slightly parted lips, eyebrows replaced by painted dots, faces uniformly white. The paintings make this look serene and beautiful, emphasizing the otherworldly refinement of aristocratic women. Ukiyo-e prints from the Edo period also depict blackened teeth, though artistic conventions vary. Some artists show teeth as solid black when mouths are open. Others indicate blackness more subtly with dark shading. Some prints minimize the blackness, perhaps finding it aesthetically challenging to represent in ways that read as beautiful. Interestingly, according to art historian Dr. Timon Screech at SOAS University of London, some ukiyo-e artists seem uncomfortable with how to depict blackened teeth. In prints meant to show beautiful women, the teeth are often barely visible, or the mouth is closed to avoid showing them clearly. This suggests that even within the culture that practiced tooth blackening, there was some aesthetic tension about how dramatically black teeth actually appeared. Photographs from the Meiji period provide the most realistic depictions. These show that blackened teeth really were as dramatically dark as described, completely black, creating a stark void in the face. The photographic evidence makes clear that artistic depictions often softened the visual impact. Modern Japanese media sometimes depicts tooth blackening in historical dramas or films set in pre-Meiji periods. These depictions are often controversial. Filmmakers must balance historical accuracy with modern aesthetic sensibilities. Some films show it accurately, creating unsettling visual effects for modern audiences. Others minimize it or omit it entirely, sacrificing accuracy for visual appeal. According to film scholar Dr. Dolores Martinez at SOAS, historical Japanese films often struggle with how to depict pre-modern beauty practices. Showing them accurately risks making characters look alien or unattractive to modern audiences. Omitting them sacrifices historical authenticity. Most films compromise, suggesting practices without showing them fully or explaining them within the narrative to help audiences understand the cultural context. Now, let's examine the relationship between tooth blackening and sexuality, because beauty practices are often connected to sexual attraction and marriage. In Heian culture, sexuality was highly aestheticized and indirect. Sexual relationships began not with physical interaction, but with exchange of poetry, appreciation of aesthetic refinement, and gradual development of emotional connection. A man who was attracted to a woman typically hadn't clearly seen her face or body. He might have glimpsed her sleeve or hem. He might have heard her voice from behind screens. He might have read her poetry and admired her calligraphy. His attraction was based on aesthetic and intellectual qualities, not physical appearance in the direct visual sense. When he eventually saw her more directly, usually after a relationship had already begun, he would see the full aristocratic aesthetic: white face, painted eyebrows, blackened teeth. This was what aristocratic female beauty looked like. Black teeth weren't despite being sexually attractive. They were part of what made a woman sexually attractive to men in that culture. According to research on Heian sexuality by Dr. William McCullough, male courtiers described women's blackened teeth in poetry as beautiful features. One poem preserved in an imperial anthology compares a woman's blackened teeth to polished lacquer, clearly intended as a compliment. The aesthetic had been so internalized that men genuinely found it attractive. But there is also evidence of ambivalence. Some literary sources suggest that extremely black, perfectly maintained teeth were admired, but teeth that were unevenly blackened or poorly maintained were considered unattractive. The practice had to be done well to be beautiful. Sloppy application or neglected maintenance could make women look worse rather than better. There is also the question of what happened during intimate moments. When a Heian couple was together privately, the woman presumably still had blackened teeth. Physical intimacy, kissing, involved contact with those blackened teeth. The taste and smell of the ohoguro solution would have been present. This must have affected the sensory experience of intimacy. Though no historical sources directly discuss this, Sexuality was discussed through elegant euphemism, not explicit description. For the woman, the aesthetic transformation might have created psychological distance, even in intimate moments. You are never fully yourself. Your body is always partially constructed through cosmetic transformation. Even alone with a lover, your teeth are black, your face is painted, the natural you is concealed. This might have actually been psychologically protective in a culture where marriages were often arranged and women had little choice about their sexual partners. The aesthetic mask creates distance, allows you to perform a role rather than being fully vulnerable. The painted aristocrat can engage in marital duties, while the natural woman underneath remains somewhat separate and protected. Now let's talk about the women who removed the coating and returned to white teeth. What that process looked like and meant. You are a woman in the Meiji period, perhaps in your 30s, who has practiced tooth blackening since puberty. The government has banned the practice. Western-influenced aesthetic standards emphasize white teeth. You decide to stop blackening and let your natural teeth show. The transition is gradual and awkward. You stop applying new coating, but the existing coating doesn't immediately disappear. It wears away slowly over weeks. During this transition, your teeth are patchy black in some areas, white showing through in others. You look worse than you did with either fully blackened or fully white teeth. You might try to accelerate the removal by scrubbing your teeth with abrasive substances, charcoal powder, salt, rough cloth. This damages your enamel further, but removes the coating faster. Your teeth emerge white but possibly damaged from years of acidic ohaguro application and now aggressive removal attempts. Your fully white teeth look strange to you. After decades of seeing black teeth as normal and beautiful, white teeth look too bright, too visible, too much like an animal's teeth. You have to retrain your aesthetic sense to see white as beautiful. Others' reactions vary. Younger people, westernized people, urban people approve of your white teeth. They see you as modern and progressive. Older people, traditional people, rural people might disapprove. They see you as abandoning proper standards, giving in to foreign influence, looking less refined. You notice practical differences. Food doesn't stain as visibly on white teeth. Your breath smells better without the metallic odor of ohaguro. You don't have to endure the unpleasant application process anymore. These improvements are real, but you also feel a loss. The blackened teeth were part of your identity, your status, your understanding of yourself as a refined aristocratic woman. White teeth make you feel like you are regressing to childhood or descending to lower class status, even though you intellectually understand the aesthetic standards of change. According to oral histories collected by Dr. Chizuko Ueno at Tokyo University, Meiji-era women who transitioned away from tooth blackening described feeling caught between cultural worlds. They knew intellectually that white teeth were now considered modern and appropriate, but emotionally they still associated white teeth with being low class or childish. The aesthetic programming of their youth persisted, despite conscious attempts to change it. Some women never transitioned. Elderly women kept their blackened teeth until death, unable or unwilling to change after a lifetime of practice. Photographs from the early 20th century show these women, the last practitioners of an aesthetic that had defined Japanese aristocratic femininity for over a millennium. The final blackened teeth disappeared in the mid-20th century when the last women who had practiced it in their youth died. By then, the practice had become so foreign to Japanese culture that young Japanese people looking at historical photographs or artwork often find it disturbing or bizarre, unable to be considered beautiful. Now, let's examine the specific health consequences in detail, because the long-term effects of decades of tooth blackening were significant and measurable. You are 60 years old. You've been blackening your teeth since age 12. That is 48 years of regular application of acidic iron solution to your teeth and gums. What does your mouth look like? Your enamel, is significantly eroded. According to dental pathology research by Dr. Ryuzo Kanazawa at Tohoku University examining skeletal remains from the Edo period, teeth of women who practiced ohaguro show characteristic erosion patterns, thinning on surfaces where coating was applied, particularly the front and visible teeth. Your teeth are more sensitive to temperature and pressure because the protective enamel layer is damaged. You have gum recession. The acidic solution didn't just affect teeth, it damaged the soft tissue of your gums where it contacted them during application. Over decades, this caused your gums to recede, exposing tooth roots. Root surfaces are more sensitive and more prone to decay than enamel-covered crowns. You experience pain eating cold or sweet foods because exposed roots react to temperature and sugar. You've lost teeth. Despite the antibacterial properties of iron tannate compounds, you still developed cavities and gum disease over the years. Some teeth decayed so severely they had to be extracted or fell out on their own. By 60, you are missing several teeth, particularly molars that were harder to coat thoroughly and thus less protected. Your jawbone shows changes. Chronic gum inflammation from decades of chemical irritation caused bone loss around your teeth. Archaeological analysis of skeletal remains shows that women who practiced ohaguro had higher rates of alveolar bone loss, the bone that holds teeth in place, compared to men of the same period who didn't blacken their teeth. You probably have chronic bad breath from the combination of damaged gums, tooth decay, and residual iron compounds. The metallic smell that was once a status symbol now signals dental disease to anyone close enough to smell it. But here is the irony. Despite all this damage, women who practiced ohaguro might have had better dental outcomes than women of lower classes who didn't. According to comparative dental analysis by Dr. Takao Suzuki at Meikai University, aristocratic women who practiced ohaguro but also had access to better nutrition, more refined diet, and better general health sometimes showed less severe dental disease than poor women with natural teeth but terrible diet and no dental care. The iron tannate coating provided some protection against decay, and the careful dietary practices associated with aristocratic life, avoiding hard or chewy foods, eating refined small portions, minimized dental trauma, so the practice was damaging but not catastrophic. You've endured decades of chemical exposure, your teeth are damaged, but you still have teeth and can still eat. The suffering was real but survivable. Let's examine the specific moment-by-moment experience of a full aesthetic preparation from bare face to completed look, because understanding the process makes the transformation more visceral. You are waking up on the day of an important court ceremony. You must be perfectly presented. The preparation begins at dawn and will take 4 to 5 hours. First, your hair. You sit while attendants comb your hair, which is so long it pools on the floor around you. The combing takes an hour because your hair must be completely smooth, every tangle removed. Attendants apply camellia oil to add shine and help the strands lie flat. Your hair is heavy. The weight of it pulls on your scalp, causes headaches, makes your neck ache from supporting it. While your hair is being dressed, you begin facial preparation. Attendants bring warm water and soft cloth to cleanse your face. You wash away any residue from yesterday's cosmetics, scrubbing gently to avoid skin damage. Your bare face emerges your natural skin tone, natural eyebrows, if any hair has grown back, natural teeth, if the coating has worn away. Next comes the oshiroi application. Attendants mix white lead powder with water into smooth paste. Using their hands or brushes, they apply this thickly to your face, starting at your forehead and working down. They coat your entire face, neck, exposed parts of your chest. The paste is cold and wet. You sit very still to avoid disrupting the application. The first layer is allowed to partially dry, then a second layer is applied for complete coverage. This takes about 30 minutes. As the paste dries, your skin feels increasingly tight and uncomfortable. You can feel the weight of the powder on your face. You can feel it beginning to crack slightly as your skin moves underneath. While the face powder dries, attendants work on your eyebrows, or rather the lack of them. If any hair has grown since your last plucking session, it must be removed. An attendant uses tweezers to carefully pluck each hair from the eyebrow area. This hurts. Your eyes water. You try not to flinch because movement makes the process harder and risks damaging your just applied face powder. Once the eyebrow area is completely smooth, attendants paint the hikimayu, the artificial eyebrows, high on your forehead. They mix black sumi ink and use a fine brush to paint two matching curved marks. The placement must be perfect, symmetrical, at the right height or right shape. If the first attempt isn't perfect, they must wipe it away and start over, which risks disturbing the underlying white powder. Now comes your turn for the ohaguro. Attendants bring the lacquered box containing the tooth blackening solution. The smell hits you even before the box is fully open. That familiar metallic, vinegary odor that you've smelled every few days for decades. It still makes you slightly nauseous, even after all these years. You take the brush, dip it into the black liquid, bring it to your mouth. You paint your teeth methodically, front teeth first, then working back to molars. The taste is terrible, bitter and metallic. The liquid burns slightly where it touches your gums. You coat all visible surfaces, checking in your bronze mirror to ensure even coverage. You hold your mouth open while the coating dries. Your jaw aches from the extended, unnatural position. Saliva pools in your mouth and you desperately want to swallow. The taste of the ohaguro coating your tongue is overwhelming. 3 minutes. 4, 5. Finally, the coating is dry enough that you can carefully close your mouth. You check your reflection. Your face is uniformly white. Your eyebrows are 2 perfect black dots high on your forehead. Your teeth, when you open your mouth slightly, are completely black. You look otherworldly refined, perfect by Heian aristocratic standards. You also look like a porcelain doll, inhuman and mask-like. But you are not done. Attendants now dress you in your junihito, the 12-layer robe ensemble. The layers are added one by one, each a different colour, chosen to create specific seasonal or aesthetic impressions. The first layer goes on, then the second, third, fourth. With each layer, the weight on your body increases. By the 12th layer, you are carrying perhaps 20 to 30 pounds of silk. Movement becomes difficult. You can't raise your arms easily. Walking is slow and deliberate. The entire process has taken 4 hours. You are exhausted just from sitting and being worked on. Your face feels stiff from the dried powder. Your jaw aches from the extended mouth opening during tooth blackening. Your neck hurts from the weight of your hair and the heavy robes. Your skin feels irritated under the lead powder, but you are perfect. You are a work of art. You are the embodiment of aristocratic refinement. This is what beauty costs. According to time-use research by Dr. Yoshiko Amino at Kyoto University, analysing Heian period daily schedules preserved in diaries, aristocratic women spent between 3 and 6 hours daily on aesthetic maintenance, depending on the formality of the day. This wasn't occasional preparation for special events. This was daily routine. The majority of your waking hours were consumed by achieving and maintaining the proper appearance. Now, let's examine what happened during menstruation, because monthly bleeding complicated the aesthetic maintenance routine in specific ways. You are menstruating, which, according to Shinto beliefs, makes you ritually impure. You can't participate in religious ceremonies during this time. You are also bleeding, which creates practical problems for maintaining cosmetic perfection. The menstrual process isn't discussed openly in historical sources. It is considered inappropriate to mention, but women had to manage it somehow. You probably use cloth pads held in place by your undergarments. These need to be changed regularly, which requires private space and access to clean cloths. In aristocratic households, servants probably handled the cleaning of menstrual cloths discreetly, but menstruation also affects your physical state in ways that impact cosmetic application. You might have cramping, fatigue, headache, all making the lengthy cosmetic process more uncomfortable. You might feel bloated, which makes the tight robes even more restrictive. You might have skin breakouts from hormonal changes, which the heavy lead powder might irritate or conceal, depending. Some women might have reduced their cosmetic routine during heavy menstrual days, staying more private and avoiding public appearances. The ritual impurity gave socially acceptable excuse for seclusion, but if you had unavoidable obligations, you had to maintain full cosmetic perfection despite feeling physically miserable. According to research on Heian period menstrual practices by Dr. Hitomi Tonomura, aristocratic women's menstrual seclusion varied by status and circumstances. Very high-ranking women could afford to fully withdraw during menstruation. Lower-ranking court ladies might have to maintain some duties, despite being menstruant, creating tension between ritual purity rules and practical obligations. The cosmetic practices themselves might have been affected by menstrual cycle. During menstruation and the days immediately after, gum tissue is more sensitive and prone to bleeding. Applying acidic ohaguro solution to already sensitive gums would be more painful than usual. Women might have been more likely to skip tooth blackening during these days if they could, or to apply it more carefully to avoid causing additional gum bleeding. Now, let's examine specific documented complaints about ohaguro from historical sources, because not everyone who practiced it enjoyed it. Some literary sources contain subtle hints of dissatisfaction or discomfort with the practice. Sei Shonagon, author of the Pillow Book, Makura no Soshi around the year 1000, mentions various things she finds elegant and various things she dislikes. While she doesn't directly criticize ohaguro, she describes the process of aesthetic preparation in ways that suggest it is laborious and sometimes uncomfortable. She writes about the unpleasantness of having to sit still for long periods during cosmetic application, about the smell of various cosmetic substances, about the discomfort of heavy robes. In one passage, she lists things that are distressing: to have wet sleeves and be forced to wear them in winter, to be pregnant in summer, to have finished one's toilet and then be asked to attend to some urgent matter, and one must do so before one can dress properly again. This last complaint suggests that the elaborate cosmetic preparation was time consuming enough that having to interrupt it and then start over was genuinely frustrating. There are also Chinese accounts of Japanese practices, written by Chinese visitors or diplomats. Some of these express shock or disgust at Japanese tooth blackening. One Chinese traveller in the 13th century wrote, "The women of this country blacken their teeth until they are like lacquer, saying this is beautiful. To Chinese eyes it appears as if their mouths are filled with ink." The comment reveals that even in nearby cultures, tooth blackening wasn't universally considered attractive. It was specific to Japanese aesthetic sensibility. Western visitors in the 16th century, after Portuguese traders and missionaries reached Japan, were even more horrified. Portuguese missionary accounts describe Japanese tooth blackening in terms of shock and disgust. One Jesuit wrote, "The women paint their faces white as snow and blacken their teeth as coal, making themselves appear most strange and frightful to European eyes." Another described feeling physically repulsed when a Japanese noblewoman smiled, revealing her blackened teeth. These Western accounts must be read critically. They're written from extremely biased perspectives, often by missionaries who viewed non-Christian practices as barbaric or demonic. But they do show that the aesthetic wasn't universally appealing, even to people from sophisticated literate cultures. Tooth blackening was culturally specific, not universally beautiful. According to cross-cultural aesthetic research by Dr. Nancy etc. at Harvard, beauty standards vary enormously across cultures, but certain features, symmetry, youth indicators, health signals are more universal. Practices like tooth blackening work against some of these universal preferences, White teeth signal health and youth in many cultures, which is why they seem so strange to outsiders. They're overriding biological aesthetic preferences through strong cultural programming. Let's talk about what happened when aristocratic women had dental emergencies, toothaches, abscesses, broken teeth. You are experiencing severe tooth pain. One of your molars, weakened by years of acidic ohagoro exposure and decay, has developed an abscess. The pain is excruciating, constant, radiating through your jaw and head. Your treatment options are extremely limited. Heian period medicine has no antibiotics, no effective pain relief beyond willow bark or opium, if you can get it. No dental surgery. For tooth extraction, you'd need to find someone, possibly a specialized tooth puller, possibly just a strong servant, who could physically wrench the tooth out of your jaw. The extraction would be performed without anesthesia. You'd be held down while someone gripped the tooth with pliers or fingers and pulled as hard as necessary to break it free from the bone. The pain would be agonizing. You'd bleed heavily from the extraction site. Infection was common after extraction because tools weren't sterilized and your mouth was full of bacteria. If you survived the extraction without dying from infection, you'd be left with a gap in your teeth. For back teeth, this might not be visible, so it wouldn't affect your appearance much. But if you lost a front tooth, you'd have an obvious gap when you smiled. There was no realistic way to replace the tooth. You'd just have to live with the gap, probably trying to minimize how wide you smiled, or keeping your mouth closed more often. According to medical historian Dr. Emiko Onuki Tierney, Heian period medicine relied heavily on herbal remedies, prayers, and magical practices. For toothache, remedies might include applying various herbal poultices to the affected tooth, burning incense, and praying to Buddhist deities, or consulting with religious practitioners who might perform purification rituals to remove the spiritual cause of the pain. None of these would actually cure a bacterial abscess. At best, some herbal remedies might have mild anti-inflammatory or antibacterial properties that would slightly reduce pain and swelling. Mostly, you'd suffer until either the infection drained on its own, if you were lucky, or the tooth was extracted, or you died from the infection spreading, if you were unlucky. The irony is that ohaguro was sometimes touted as protective against dental problems, and the iron tannate compounds did have some antibacterial properties, but they weren't effective enough to prevent all dental disease, and the acidic application process itself caused damage that made teeth more vulnerable to problems. You were caught in a cycle where the practice meant to protect your teeth also damaged them. Now, let's examine the economics of ohaguro. Who could afford it? What it cost? How materials were obtained? The practice required regular access to specific materials: iron, sake or tea, gallnuts or other tannin sources, and containers for preparing and storing the solution. For aristocratic households, these costs were negligible relative to total household budget. But for lower status women who aspired to practice ohaguro, the costs could be significant. Iron was relatively cheap. Old nails or iron scraps could be collected. Sake was more expensive, but could be replaced with tea for poorer practitioners. Gallnuts had to be collected or purchased. The containers lacquered boxes for storing solution, brushes for application, bronze mirrors for checking results, represented one-time investments but needed to be maintained or replaced. According to economic research by Dr. Kozo Yamamura at the University of Washington, analyzing Edo period household budgets, cosmetic expenses for women of merchant and samurai classes could represent 5 to 10% of household income. This included not just ohaguro materials, but also face powder, rouge, hair oils, and clothing. For poorer families, these expenses were burdensome but socially necessary for maintaining status. Some women might have shared ohaguro materials among household members to reduce costs. Mothers and daughters could use the same batch of solution. Multiple women in an extended family household could pool resources for purchasing gallnuts, or higher quality sake for the solution. There was also a market for ready-made ohaguro solution. Vendors sold prepared ohaguro mixture that was ready to use, eliminating the weeks-long preparation process. This was more expensive than making your own, but saved time and ensured consistent quality. According to commercial records from Edo period, ohaguro vendors were common in urban areas, selling various grades of solution at different price points. The existence of a commercial ohaguro market shows how widespread the practice had become by the Edo period. What started as aristocratic practice had spread to samurai class, merchant class, even some rural women. Each class might use different quality materials and apply with different frequency, but the basic practice crossed class boundaries. Let's talk about what happened during the transition from childhood to adulthood, because the first tooth blackening was a significant life event. You are 12 years old. Your family has decided it is time for you to begin practicing ohaguro, marking your transition from child to young woman of marriageable age. This might be accompanied by a small ceremony or might be done privately with just family and close attendance. Your mother explains what will happen, that you'll be blackening your teeth from now on, that this marks you as grown up, that it will make you beautiful and marriageable. You are nervous and curious. You've seen adult women with blackened teeth your whole life. You've been taught that it is beautiful, but you've also probably heard complaints from older sisters or relatives about how unpleasant the process is. You don't know which to believe more, the cultural messages about beauty or the warnings about discomfort. The first application is performed carefully, possibly by your mother or an experienced attendant who can guide you through it. The smell of the solution makes you grimace. You've never experienced anything quite like it before. When the brush first touches your teeth with the black liquid, the taste makes you want to gag. The acidity stings your gums. Your eyes water. You are told to hold your mouth open while it dries. Your jaw isn't used to this position. It starts aching after just a minute. You want to close your mouth to spit out the terrible taste, but you are told to stay still. 2 minutes. 3. Your jaw is shaking from the strain. Finally, you are allowed to close your mouth. You look in the mirror. Your teeth are black. You look older, strange, beautiful, but frightening. Your mother and attendants praise you. You are so grown up now, so refined, so beautiful. You try to accept the praise, to feel proud, but mostly you feel weird about how different you look. The taste lingers for hours. You can't get rid of the metallic flavor no matter how much you rinse your mouth. The smell stays in your nose. That night you dream about it. Confused dreams mixing the strange sensations with anxieties about growing up and changing. Over the next weeks and months you get used to it. The smell becomes familiar, almost comforting in its familiarity. The taste stops being shocking and becomes just an unpleasant thing you endure every few days. The appearance of black teeth becomes your normal face, and seeing your teeth white on days when coating has worn away starts to look wrong. You've crossed a threshold. You are not a child anymore. Your blackened teeth announce to everyone that you are of marriageable age, that you are participating in adult feminine culture, that you are becoming a woman. According to research on Japanese coming-of-age practices by Dr. John Mock at the University of Alaska, tooth blackening was one of several body modifications that marked female transition to adulthood. Others included changes in hairstyle, changes in clothing style, and sometimes ear piercing. These modifications were public signals of changed status, making the transition visible to community members. The practice tied physical transformation to social transformation. You weren't just told you were an adult now, your body was modified to reflect that status. The modification was semi-permanent. Tooth blackening had to be maintained but became part of your daily routine. You couldn't easily reverse it without social consequences. Your body was inscribed with your new status. Now let's examine what happened when practitioners got sick or injured in ways that prevented maintaining the aesthetic. You've been ill with fever for a week. You are too weak to sit up for long periods, too nauseous to tolerate the smell and taste of ohagoro, too exhausted to endure the lengthy cosmetic process. Your teeth gradually return to white as the black coating wears away. Your face is bare of powder. Your eyebrows, those few hairs that have grown back since last plucking, are visible. You look like your natural self, which you haven't seen in years. If you are seriously ill, no one expects you to maintain cosmetic perfection. Attendants and family focus on keeping you alive, not keeping you beautiful. Your natural appearance during illness is forgiven as unavoidable necessity. But as you start recovering, there is pressure to resume the aesthetic practices as soon as you are able, returning to blackened teeth and painted face signals that you are recovering, that you are returning to normal life. Delaying too long might cause whispers. Is she still too ill to maintain herself? Is she being lazy? Is she losing her commitment to proper standards? If you suffered permanent injury or disfigurement, facial scarring from accident or illness, tooth loss, anything that affected your appearance, the cosmetic practices became both more important to conceal imperfection and more difficult to apply to damaged skin or around missing teeth. According to medical historian Dr. Katsuya Hirano at UCLA, Heian period aristocrats had limited effective medical treatments. Illness and injury were common, and survival often depended more on luck and basic nursing care than on medical intervention. Women who survived serious illness, but with lasting effects, might find their marriageability or social status affected, with cosmetic practices serving as partial compensation for physical imperfection. Now let's examine the specific sensory experience in detail, what it felt, tasted, smelled, looked like from the practitioner's perspective. You are applying ohaguro on a typical morning. You open the lacquered box containing your tooth blackening solution. Immediately the smell emerges: iron vinegar, tannins. It is a complex smell, metallic like blood or rusty nails, sour like vinegar or fermented tea, slightly woody from the tannins. After years of daily exposure, you are so accustomed to it that you barely notice consciously, but new visitors to your chambers often wrinkle their noses at the distinctive odour. You dip your brush into the thick black liquid. The consistency is like thin ink or watery paint, fluid enough to paint smoothly, but viscous enough to coat and cling. The liquid is cool temperature if you've stored it properly, slightly warm if it has been sitting in a heated room. You bring the brush to your mouth and paint the first stroke across your front teeth. The sensation hits multiple senses simultaneously: taste, touch, smell, all intensifying. The taste is overwhelming, bitter, metallic, acidic. It is like licking an old iron nail that has been soaking in sour wine. The bitterness coats your tongue immediately. Your salivary glands react to the acidity, flooding your mouth with saliva that you can't swallow without disturbing the coating process. The touch sensation is equally distinct. The liquid is cold against the warmth of your mouth. Where it contacts your gums, there is slight stinging from the acidity. The brush bristles scratch lightly against enamel as you paint. You can feel the liquid pooling in the tiny spaces between teeth, trickling down toward the gum line. You continue painting, each stroke adding more of that terrible taste, more stinging sensation on your gums, more of the smell intensifying as the fumes rise right into your nose from inside your own mouth. Your eyes water slightly from the chemical irritation. You might feel slight nausea from the combination of taste and smell, but you've learned to control it over years of practice. As you coat your back molars, you have to open your mouth very wide and angle your head to see in the bronze mirror. This triggers your gag reflex slightly. The brush touching the backs of your teeth, the liquid dripping toward your throat. You breathe carefully through your nose, fighting the urge to cough or gag. Now comes the worst part: holding still while it dries. Your mouth is full of this terrible tasting liquid. You can't swallow the saliva that is accumulated without disturbing the coating. You can't close your mouth or your teeth will touch and smear the not yet dry coating. You just have to endure. The minutes pass slowly. The taste doesn't diminish, if anything. It seems to intensify as your tongue grows more coated with the solution. Your jaw aches from being held open. Saliva pools at the back of your throat, and you have to consciously not swallow. Your eyes are watering. You might be making small whimpering sounds of discomfort without realizing it. Finally, the coating is dry enough. You carefully close your mouth. The first thing you notice is that the coating has texture slightly rough, not smooth like your natural enamel. Your tongue exploring your teeth feels this roughness. The taste is still there, coating every surface of your mouth. You want desperately to rinse, to spit, to get rid of the taste. But rinsing too vigorously will damage the coating you just spent painful minutes applying. You take a small sip of water, swish gently spit. Some of the worst of the taste dissipates, but the metallic flavour lingers. It will linger all day, affecting how everything else tastes. Your morning tea will taste metallic. Your rice will taste slightly bitter. Everything is tainted by the ohaguro coating your teeth. According to sensory anthropology research by Dr. David Howes at Concordia University, cultural practices often involve retraining the senses to accept or even enjoy sensations that are initially unpleasant. Through repeated exposure and cultural reinforcement, practitioners of practices like ohaguro may develop genuine habituation or even positive associations with sensations that outsiders find repulsive. The smell and taste of ohaguro become familiar, associated with beauty and status, potentially transforming from unpleasant to acceptable or even comforting in their familiarity. Let's talk about the specific social interactions around tooth blackening, how women discussed it, complained about it, helped each other with it. You are in your private chambers with several other court ladies, all preparing for the day. The conversation naturally turns to cosmetic matters as you all go through your routines. One woman complains that her latest batch of ohaguro solution came out too thin. It is not coating evenly and she has to apply multiple layers. Another offers advice: add more gallnuts to the next batch. Let it steep longer. The solution will thicken. A third woman mentions that her teeth have been more sensitive lately. The solution stings more than usual. Is she applying it wrong? Should she dilute it slightly? You all compare techniques. One woman has perfected applying to her back molars without gagging. She shares her trick of angling her head just so. Another has found that adding a tiny amount of honey to the solution makes the taste slightly more bearable without affecting the colour significantly. These tips are shared quietly, woman to woman, not formally taught, but transmitted through casual conversation. There might be complaints mixed with the practical advice. My jaw aches so much from holding it open. I swear it was never this bad when I was younger. The smell is terrible today. Did something go wrong with my batch? I hate how everything tastes metallic for hours after application. These complaints are met with sympathy and shared groaning. Everyone knows exactly what she is talking about because they all endure the same discomforts. But there is also pride and competition. Have you seen Lady Fujiwara's teeth? Perfectly black, evenly coated. She must reapply daily. I've been using the solution, my grandmother's recipe. It creates the deepest black you've ever seen. Women who maintain perfect blackened teeth despite the discomfort are admired for their dedication and discipline. According to research on Heian court culture by Dr. Ivan Morris at Columbia University, aristocratic women's quarters were spaces of both cooperation and competition. Women helped each other with practical matters, but also competed for status and favourable marriages. Cosmetic perfection was one arena of competition. Who maintained the best face powder, the most perfectly black teeth, the most elegant overall presentation? The conversations about ohaguro were both practical, sharing techniques and solutions to problems, and social, establishing hierarchies, creating in-group bonds through shared suffering, judging those who didn't maintain standards properly. The practice created a community of shared experience among women who all endured the same unpleasant routine. Now let's examine what happened to teeth after death, because archaeological evidence provides some of our best information about Ohaguro practices. You die at age 45. Your body is prepared for burial according to Buddhist customs. Your teeth, still stained black from decades of Ohaguro use, go into the ground with you. Centuries later, archaeologists excavate your burial site. Your skeleton is well preserved in the dry soil conditions. Your teeth are analysed by bioarchaeologists, trying to understand health and cultural practices of your era. The first thing they notice is the colour. Even after centuries in the ground, your teeth show distinctive dark staining, particularly on the front surfaces and visible areas. Chemical analysis reveals high iron content in the stained enamel, confirming Ohaguro practice. The pattern of staining shows which teeth were regularly coated. Front and visible teeth show heavy staining, versus which were neglected. Back molars might show little staining, because they were harder to reach during application. The second thing they notice is enamel erosion. Your teeth show thinning on surfaces where coating was applied, consistent with repeated acid exposure. The erosion pattern is distinctive enough that bioarchaeologists can identify Ohaguro practitioners from skeletal remains, even without visible staining. They also notice gum disease indicators. The bone around your teeth shows recession and inflammatory changes consistent with chronic gum irritation. You had periodontitis, likely worsened by decades of acidic solution exposure. Several teeth are missing entirely, whether they fell out before death or were lost post. Mortem is hard to determine, but the bone changes suggest at least some were lost during life. Your teeth also show cavities, particularly near the gum line where the coating didn't protect. The decay pattern gives clues about your diet and oral health practices. Comparison with male skeletons from the same period who didn't practice Ohaguro shows you had somewhat more enamel erosion, but possibly fewer cavities in certain locations, suggesting complex relationship between Ohaguro and dental health. According to bioarchaeological research by Dr. Tomoko Nakagawa at the National Museum of Japanese History, skeletal analysis has confirmed that Ohaguro was practiced across various social classes by the Edo period, not just by the highest aristocracy. Skeletons from samurai class burials, wealthy merchant burials, and even some rural burials show the distinctive tooth staining and enamel patterns. This physical evidence sometimes contradicts written historical sources that emphasized Ohaguro as primarily aristocratic practice, showing that by later periods it had spread more widely. Let's talk about the specific experience of travelling while maintaining Ohaguro practices, because aristocratic women occasionally made journeys, religious pilgrimages, relocations to new residences after marriage, visits to family. You are preparing for a 3-day journey to a distant temple. You need to bring supplies to maintain your aesthetic during travel. Packing for the journey includes your cosmetic supplies, containers of Ohaguro solution, carefully sealed to prevent spilling or evaporation, extra iron filings and gull nuts in case you need to prepare fresh solution, face powder, sumi ink for eyebrows, brushes and applicators, your bronze mirror. These items are essential. You can't let your appearance lapse just because you are travelling. During the journey, you are confined to a palanquin, a covered seat carried by bearers. The palanquin provides privacy, but is cramped and uncomfortable. You wear simplified clothing compared to your usual 12-layer robes, but you are still heavily dressed. The journey is hot, dusty, uncomfortable. Each evening when you reach a rest stop, you have to go through your cosmetic routine in less than ideal conditions. The accommodations might not have good lighting or mirrors. You might not have access to clean water for mixing fresh Ohaguro solution. You have to make do with what you brought and what is available. Applying Ohaguro is harder while travelling. You are tired from the journey. The lighting is poor. Your stored solution might have thickened or separated. requiring mixing before use. The smell of ohaguro in a small, poorly ventilated room is more oppressive than in your usual well-aired chambers, but you apply it anyway because arriving at your destination without blackened teeth would be humiliating. The coating wears away faster during travel. The dust in the air makes you cough, disrupting the coating. The different food at rest stops might be harder or chewier than your usual refined diet, causing more coating damage. You might have to reapply more frequently than usual, consuming your travelling supply faster than planned. According to research on Heian period travel by Dr. William McCullough, aristocratic women travelled relatively rarely, partly because maintaining proper appearance and etiquette while travelling was so difficult. When travel was necessary, women brought extensive entourages of attendants who could help with cosmetic and clothing maintenance. But even with help, travel was uncomfortable and made aesthetic maintenance harder. Now let's examine the specific psychological experience of rare moments seeing your natural face. You are alone in your private chambers late at night. All the cosmetics have been removed for sleeping. Your face is bare. Your teeth show their natural colour, though still stained from years of ohaguro. No one sees you like this, except your most intimate attendants. You look in your mirror. Your natural face looks strange to you. Your real eyebrows, thin, sparse from years of plucking, but still growing back slightly, look wrong compared to the painted dots you are used to. Your skin tone, yellowish, olive rather than pure white, looks plain and ordinary. Your teeth showing through as patchy white and grey, with black stains in places where enamel is permanently discoloured, looking complete without their black coating. You've spent so many years seeing yourself only in full cosmetic presentation that your natural face seems like the disguise and the painted face seems like your true appearance. The philosophical implications are unsettling. Which face is really you? The one that is biologically yours but that almost no one sees, or the one that is culturally constructed but that defines your social identity? You might feel vulnerable seeing yourself this way. The painted face is armour, a perfect mask that protects you from scrutiny. Your natural face is exposed, imperfect, human. The blackened teeth and white face create psychological distance between you and the world. Without them, you are just yourself. No protection, no performance. Just your actual face with all its imperfections. Or you might feel relieved for a few hours each night you don't have to maintain the performance. Your skin can breathe. You don't taste iron. Your jaw doesn't ache from holding positions during application. This is the private you. The one who exists only in darkness and solitude. The one who remembers what your face looked like before the transformation. According to psychological anthropology research by Dr. Taki Libra, the split between public and private selves in Japanese culture creates complex relationships to identity. The public self is carefully constructed and maintained through performance, appearance, and etiquette. The private self is what remains when the public masks are removed. Neither is more real than the other. Both are authentic aspects of identity, just oriented toward different contexts. But the tension between them can create psychological strain, especially when the public self requires painful or uncomfortable maintenance. Let's examine what happened when Western contact intensified in the 16th-19th centuries and outsiders reacted to ohaguro with visible disgust. You are an aristocratic woman in the 1590s. Portuguese traders and missionaries have arrived in Japan. You've heard that they have strange appearances and customs, and you are curious about them. A Portuguese trader is invited to court for diplomatic discussions. You are observing from behind screens, as is proper for women. The trader is shown into the formal reception room. At some point, he catches a glimpse of you and other court ladies through a gap in the screens. His eyes widen. His expression shifts to something like shock or disgust. He quickly looks away and tries to compose himself. but you saw his reaction. Later, you hear from attendants who speak some Portuguese that the traders were talking among themselves about the strange Japanese custom of blackening teeth. They used words that translate roughly as ugly, frightening, or barbaric. They genuinely found the practice repulsive. This feedback from outsiders creates cognitive dissonance. You've been taught your entire life that blackened teeth are beautiful. Every person in your culture agrees. But here are sophisticated foreigners from advanced civilizations. Portugal is wealthy and powerful, its traders well-dressed and educated, who find your beauty practices horrifying. Do you question your own aesthetic standards? Probably not immediately or deeply. Cultural programming is strong, and a few foreigners' opinions don't outweigh a lifetime of cultural training. But perhaps there is a tiny seed of doubt. If these outsiders find it ugly, maybe it is not objectively beautiful. Maybe it is just beautiful within your specific cultural context. Or perhaps you double down on your cultural practices. The foreigners are barbarians who don't understand Japanese refinement. Their aesthetic standards are wrong, uncultured. Your practices are beautiful precisely because they're Japanese. Sophisticated, refined. The foreigner's disgust proves they're not sophisticated enough to appreciate true beauty. According to research on Japanese Western contact by Dr. Ronald Tobey at the University of Illinois, early encounters between Japanese and Europeans were characterized by mutual incomprehension and cultural shock. Both sides found the other's customs strange or repulsive. Japanese were horrified by Europeans eating meat and dairy products. Europeans were horrified by Japanese bathing practices, which they considered immodest, and cosmetic practices like tooth blackening. Each side interpreted the other's customs through their own cultural frameworks and found them wanting. These early contact experiences planted seeds for later changes. When Japan opened to Western trade and influence in the mid-19th century, the memory of Western disgust at Japanese practices contributed to eagerness to westernize and abandon customs that made Japan look backwards to foreign eyes. Tooth blackening was one of many practices abandoned partly to make Japan appear more civilized by Western standards. Now let's talk about the specific experience of elderly women who had practiced ohaguro their entire lives, because the cumulative effects over 50 or 60 years were significant. You are 70 years old. You've been blackening your teeth since age 12. That is 58 years of regular ohaguro application, approximately 10,000 separate applications over your lifetime, each one exposing your teeth to acidic solution. Your teeth are badly damaged. The enamel is severely eroded, worn down to dentin in some places. Several teeth have been lost to decay or breakage. You are missing molars and even a few front teeth. The remaining teeth are loose in their sockets because the bone holding them has deteriorated from decades of gum inflammation. Your gums are receded, exposing tooth roots that are extremely sensitive. Eating hot or cold foods causes sharp pain. Sweet foods cause pain because sugar contacts expose dentin. You've developed strategies to minimize discomfort, eating only warm foods, avoiding sweets entirely, chewing carefully on the least damaged side of your mouth. You still blacken your teeth or attempt to, but with fewer teeth and damaged gums, the application is even more painful than in your youth. The acidic solution stings worse against exposed roots. You can't coat teeth you've lost, so your smile shows gaps between black teeth. The overall effect is no longer beautiful, even by traditional standards. It is the appearance of decay and age poorly disguised by incomplete cosmetic application. But you continue the practice because stopping would feel like giving up on propriety entirely. You've done this for nearly 6 decades. It is part of who you are. Even though it hurts more now and looks less perfect, you persist because the alternative white teeth, natural teeth, teeth that mark you as someone who has abandoned standards, seems worse than the painful maintenance. Your younger relatives might gently suggest you could stop. You've earned the right to be comfortable in old age. No one would criticize you for having natural teeth now. But you resist. The tooth blackening is tied up with your identity, your status, your whole life's habits. Stopping feels like becoming a different person. And at 70, you are not interested in becoming someone new. According to research on aging in pre-modern Japan by Dr. Kanji Ishii at Waseda University, elderly women of aristocratic background often continued traditional practices long after they were strictly necessary, partly from habit and partly from identity maintenance. The practices were how they understood themselves, and abandoning them felt like losing identity rather than gaining freedom. Let's examine the moment of historical transition in detail, the exact point when oheguro shifted from normal to abnormal in Japanese society. It is 1870. The Meiji government has just banned tooth blackening for the imperial family. Word spreads quickly through aristocratic circles. Women gather in private to discuss what this means. If the empress no longer blackens her teeth, is it still proper for us to do so? The government says it is a feudal practice that makes us look backwards to foreign observers. But our mothers and grandmothers all practiced oheguro. Are we saying they were wrong? The conversations mix practical concerns. Should we stop immediately or gradually? Status anxiety. What signals proper status now that the old markers are changing? And emotional responses: grief at losing a practice tied to identity, relief at being freed from unpleasant routine, confusion about what is expected. Some women stop immediately, eager to embrace westernization and modernity. They scrub their teeth clean, grow out their eyebrows, reduce their face powder to lighter applications. They feel modern, progressive, sophisticated. They look at women still practicing oheguro with pity or contempt. Those poor old-fashioned women who can't adapt to the new era. Other women continue the practice despite the ban. They're older, more invested in traditional identity, more resistant to change. They see the ban as foreign corruption, abandonment of Japanese culture. They continue blackening their teeth as an act of cultural preservation or defiance, even as they're increasingly seen as backwards. Still, other women are caught between, uncertain what to do. They're old enough to have practiced oheguro for years, but young enough to see advantages in westernization. They might stop practicing but feel strange and uncomfortable with white teeth. Or they might continue practicing but feel embarrassed when they interact with westernized people who find it ugly. Families are split generationally. Grandmothers continue oheguro until death. Mothers might stop reluctantly under pressure from westernized daughters. Daughters embrace white teeth eagerly as symbol of modernity. These generational divisions create household tensions. Daughters embarrassed by their traditional mothers. Mothers hurt by daughters' rejection of cultural practices. According to research on Meiji-era cultural transformation by Dr. Carol Gluck, the speed and totality of change created enormous social stress. Practices that had been normal for centuries became abnormal within a generation. People who followed old customs were stigmatized as backwards. This created what Gluck calls cultural whiplash, disorientation from rapid reversal of cultural norms that had seemed eternal. The oheguro transition exemplifies this. In 1860, a woman with white teeth would be seen as lower class or childish. In 1880, a woman with blackened teeth was seen as backwards and provincial. The aesthetic standard completely reversed within 20 years. People who lived through this transition experienced it as deeply disorienting. Their entire framework for understanding beauty and status was inverted. Now let's talk about the final practitioners. The very last women who blackened their teeth before the practice died out entirely. You were born in 1885. You grow up in a rural area where traditional practices persist longer than in cities. Your mother teaches you oheguro when you reach puberty around 1900. You practice it through your 20s and 30s, even as the practice becomes increasingly rare and seen as old-fashioned. By the 1920s, you are one of very few women still practicing oheguro regularly. When you visit nearby towns, people stare at your blackened teeth. Children point and whisper. Even in your rural area, younger women have stopped the practice. You are seen as quaint at best, backwards at worst, but you continue partly from habit, partly from belief that it is still beautiful and proper, partly because stopping now would feel like admitting your entire life's practice was wrong. You are in your 40s now. You've been doing this for over 25 years. The practice is woven into your daily routine, your self-image, your understanding of femininity and beauty. By the 1940s, you are in your 50s and possibly one of the last women in Japan still practicing ohaguro. Anthropologists or folklorists might come to document you. The practice is now seen as historical curiosity, something to be recorded before it disappears entirely. They photograph you, ask questions about how you prepare the solution, why you still do it when everyone else has stopped. You try to explain that it is beautiful, that it is traditional, that abandoning it would feel wrong. But you are also aware that you sound defensive, that these young educated visitors find your practice bizarre. The photographs they take will end up in museums or archives, preserved as evidence of a practice that has vanished from living culture. You die sometime in the 1950s or 1960s, possibly one of the very last women who practiced ohaguro. Your obituary might note this: one of the last women to practice traditional tooth blackening, as if it is a curiosity worth mentioning. Your children and grandchildren have white teeth. The practice dies with you. According to historical documentation efforts by Dr. Teruo Nogami at the National Museum of Ethnology, the last confirmed practitioners of ohaguro died in the mid-20th century. By the 1970s, there was no one left who had practiced it as a normal part of their life. The practice existed only in historical records, museum exhibits, and occasional theatrical performances depicting pre-modern Japan. A 1,000-year tradition had completely vanished from living practice within a single human lifetime. Let's examine the specific literary references to tooth blackening in classical Japanese literature, because how the practice was described by contemporary writers reveals cultural attitudes. In the tale of Genji, written by Murasaki Shikibu around 1010, blackened teeth are mentioned as markers of female beauty and maturity. When describing beautiful women, the text notes their teeth black as lacquer, as a positive aesthetic feature, equivalent to praising their hair or complexion. In one scene, Genji encounters a woman who has not yet blackened her teeth, and her white teeth are described as making her look childish and unrefined. The implication is clear for an adult aristocratic woman. White teeth are inappropriate and unattractive. The passage doesn't dwell on the process of blackening or suggest any discomfort. It treats blackened teeth as simply normal appearance for proper women. The Pillow Book by Seishonagon, written around 1000, includes lists of things the author finds elegant or distressing. While Seishonagon doesn't directly discuss tooth blackening in these lists, she describes various cosmetic preparations and their associated smells and sensations. Her writing suggests that the sensory experience of cosmetic application was something aristocratic women thought about and had opinions on, even if they didn't openly criticize required practices. In Hike Monogatari, the tale of the hike, written in the 13th century, tooth blackening is mentioned in descriptions of warriors' wives and daughters. Even in a text focused on military conflicts, female characters are described partly through their cosmetic practices. A woman's blackened teeth signal her proper aristocratic upbringing, distinguishing her from lower-class women who might appear in the narrative. According to literary scholar Dr. Haru Sharan at Columbia University, these classical texts treat tooth blackening as such a normal part of aristocratic feminine appearance that it is rarely discussed in detail. The practice is mentioned in passing when describing a woman's beauty, but the process, discomfort, or rationale isn't explained because contemporary readers would already understand. This makes it challenging for modern readers to reconstruct the full experience. We have to read between the lines and combine literary evidence with other historical sources. Later literature from the Edo period shows shifting attitudes. Some texts begin to treat tooth blackening with slight irony or humor, suggesting that by this period there was some cultural distance from the practice even as it continued. Comic stories might include jokes about women's black-stained teeth or the smell of ohagoro. This humour wouldn't have been possible in high-end literature, where the practice was too sacred and normal to mock. Now let's talk about the spiritual and religious dimensions of tooth blackening, because physical transformation had metaphysical significance in Japanese culture. In Shinto belief, the body is a vessel that can be made pure or impure through various practices. Cosmetic transformation wasn't just about appearance. It was about achieving a state of refinement that had spiritual implications. Blackened teeth, shaved eyebrows, and painted face transformed you from your natural animalistic state into a refined, cultured being. This transformation wasn't superficial. It was believed to reflect and create internal refinement. By perfecting your external appearance according to cultural ideals, you were also cultivating proper internal attitudes and spiritual development. There were also ritual dimensions to tooth blackening at certain life stages. The first tooth blackening, when a girl reached puberty, might be accompanied by prayers or offerings at household shrines, asking ancestors and kami spirits to bless the girl's transition to womanhood. The practice became a ritual marking transformation, not just a cosmetic choice. After marriage, tooth blackening took on additional significance. Married women were expected to blacken their teeth as sign of their married status. The practice distinguished married women from unmarried girls, creating a visible hierarchy of female life stages. In this context, stopping tooth blackening could be seen as rejecting your married status or failing to properly respect your role. According to research on Japanese religious practices by Dr. Helen Hardacre at Harvard Shinto and Buddhist ideas about purity, transformation and proper conduct deeply influenced aesthetic practices. The body wasn't just a physical entity, it was a site where spiritual and social meanings were enacted. Cosmetic transformation was one way to manifest internal virtues externally, to demonstrate that you possessed the refinement appropriate to your status. This spiritual dimension helps explain why the practice was maintained despite its discomfort. It wasn't just about looking attractive to potential husbands or conforming to social pressure. It was about achieving a state of being that was considered spiritually and morally superior to the natural untransformed state. Refusing to blacken your teeth wasn't just aesthetic failure, it was a kind of spiritual or moral failure, a rejection of refinement and civilization. Let's examine what modern Japanese people think about ohaguro when they encounter it in historical contexts. You are a young Japanese person in 2025, visiting a museum exhibit about Heian period court culture. You see paintings and artifacts depicting noblewomen with blackened teeth and shaved eyebrows. What is your reaction? For many modern Japanese, ohaguro is fascinating, but alien. They know intellectually that it was a historical practice, but emotionally it seems bizarre and unattractive. The aesthetic sensibility that made blackened teeth beautiful has been so completely lost that even Japanese people who are descendants of the culture that created the practice can't access it intuitively. Some feel embarrassment that their ancestors practiced something so strange looking. When Western friends or tourists ask about ohaguro, modern Japanese might feel defensive or uncomfortable, as if they need to explain or apologize for their cultural history. The practice has become exoticized, turned into a marker of how different and strange old Japan was, rather than understood as normal within its context. Others feel curious fascination and pride in the uniqueness of Japanese aesthetic traditions. They see ohaguro as an interesting example of how beauty standards are culturally constructed, and they appreciate the historical complexity without feeling personally connected to or defensive about the practice. There is also sometimes a gendered response. Women might feel particular interest in or sympathy for the women who practiced ohaguro, seeing them as predecessors who endured significant discomfort for beauty. Men might be more detached, treating it as historical curiosity without personal connection. According to research on modern Japanese historical consciousness by Dr. Carol Gluck, contemporary Japanese people have complex relationships with pre-modern Japanese culture. There is simultaneous pride in Japanese tradition and discomfort with aspects of that tradition that seem backwards or oppressive by modern standards. Practices like ohagoro, foot binding in China, or corsetting in Europe become sites where people negotiate between cultural pride and modern values. Museums and historical sites in Japan navigate this complexity by presenting ohagoro in educational, contextualized ways. Exhibits explain the cultural logic, the materials used, the social meanings. They try to help visitors understand the practice within its context rather than just gawking at how weird it looks. But the fundamental strangeness remains. Modern aesthetic senses can't fully recapture what made blackened teeth beautiful to Heian aristocrats. Now let's talk about the specific experience of women who married men from different cultures or classes where tooth blackening wasn't practiced. You are an aristocratic woman who has married into a merchant class family. In your birth family, all women practice tooth blackening from puberty onward. In your husband's family, which is wealthy but not aristocratic, the practice is less common or practiced differently. Your husband's family might find your blackened teeth excessive or pretentious. She is putting on aristocratic airs, blackening her teeth like some court lady. Your mother-in-law might suggest you could stop, that it is unnecessary for a merchant household. This puts you in an uncomfortable position. Maintaining the practice signals loyalty to your birth family standards, but creates tension with your marital family. Stopping the practice feels like betraying your upbringing and lowering your standards, but continuing creates daily friction. You might compromise maintaining lighter or less frequent application, or only blackening your teeth for formal occasions. This middle path satisfies no one fully but minimizes conflict. Your birth family sees you as lowering standards. Your marital family sees you as still being difficult about cosmetics. You are caught between two value systems with no perfect solution. Or, consider a reverse situation. You are from a merchant family marrying into aristocracy. You haven't practiced tooth blackening regularly, perhaps only occasionally for major events. Your new aristocratic household expects daily perfect cosmetic presentation. You are suddenly expected to adopt practices that are more intensive, more uncomfortable, and more expensive than what you are used to. You struggle to learn proper techniques. Your first attempts at tooth blackening are uneven, some teeth more black than others, coating that doesn't dry properly, solution that is mixed wrong. Aristocratic attendants watching you fumble with the process might be silently critical. You are being judged on whether you can achieve the aesthetic standards of your new status, and you are finding it harder than expected. According to research on marriage patterns and social mobility by Dr. Eiko Ikigami at the New School, marriages between different social classes created opportunities for social mobility, but also cultural friction. Women moving between classes had to learn new cosmetic, behavioral, and social practices. The process was often stressful, with women feeling judged by both birth family for changing and marital family for not changing quickly or thoroughly enough. Tooth blackening became one marker among many where class differences and cultural expectations were enacted and negotiated. Women's bodies became sites where family honor, class status, and personal adaptation were all performed through cosmetic practices. Let's examine specific recipes for a hagoro solution that have been preserved in historical documents, because the variations reveal how the practice was customized and refined. One recipe from an Edo period household manual calls for 100 grams of iron filings, 1 liter of sake, 50 grams of crushed gallnuts, and a small amount of tea. The iron is soaked in sake for 3 weeks. Then gallnuts and tea are added and the mixture steeped for another week. The resulting liquid is strained and stored in a sealed ceramic pot. Another recipe, reportedly from a court noble household, uses higher quality ingredients, iron from specially prepared nails. not random scraps, premium sake, imported gallnuts from China, and powdered green tea. This produced a deeper, more lustrous black coating that lasted longer between applications. The recipe was guarded as family secret, passed from mother to daughter, never written down until much later. A simpler recipe for lower status practitioners calls for iron nails, soaked in cheap rice wine, or even vinegar, local tannin sauces, like crushed acorns or walnut hulls, and no special preparations. This produced adequate blackening at lower cost, though the coating might be less even and less durable. Some recipes include additional ingredients, honey or sugar to improve taste, fragrant herbs to mask smell, even small amounts of minerals like copper to modify the color slightly. These additions show women trying to make the unpleasant process more bearable, or the results more aesthetically refined. According to analysis of historical recipes by Dr. Yoshida Mitsuharu at Kyoto Prefectural University, the basic chemistry was consistent across all recipes: iron plus acid plus tannins, but the specific ingredients and proportions varied based on class, region, and family tradition. Higher status practitioners used more expensive ingredients and more elaborate preparation methods, creating superior results, but at higher cost. The practice scaled across economic levels, with everyone doing fundamentally the same thing but with different degrees of refinement. Now let's talk about what happened to the ohaguro industry when the practice declined. The artisans, vendors, and businesses that had supported the practice. By the late Edo period, there was a whole economic ecosystem around tooth blackening. Specialists who prepared and sold ohaguro solution, artisans who made application brushes and storage boxes, shops that sold gallnuts and other ingredients. When the Meiji government banned the practice for upper classes and Western-style beauty standards spread, this industry collapsed. Ohaguro vendors saw their customer base shrink year by year. What had been a stable business servicing an essential daily practice became a declining niche market, serving only the elderly and rural traditionalists. Some vendors tried to adapt. They might have marketed their products as traditional or authentic, selling to the diminishing market of conservatives who maintained old practices despite changing times. Others diversified into other cosmetic products, face powders, rouges, hair oils that weren't specifically associated with declining traditions, but many simply went out of business. The specialized knowledge of preparing perfect ohaguro solution became unnecessary. The artisans who made beautiful lacquered boxes for storing the solution found no market for their products. A whole set of skills and crafts that had been passed down through generations became obsolete within a few decades. By the early 20th century, it was already difficult to find high-quality ohaguro solution even if you wanted it. The few remaining practitioners might have to make their own solution from scratch, or accept inferior commercial products made by vendors who were themselves losing expertise as their customer base aged and died. According to economic historian Dr. Penelope Franks at the University of Leeds, the Meiji-era transformation of Japanese culture had enormous economic impacts beyond the obvious industrial and infrastructural changes. Traditional crafts, services, and products tied to specific cultural practices faced sudden market collapse when those practices were abandoned. Ohaguro was just one example among many traditional clothing artisans, palanquin bearers, tea ceremony utensil makers, and many other specialists saw their livelihoods disrupted by cultural westernization. Let's examine the modern revival or representation of ohaguro in contemporary contexts, because the practice occasionally appears in modern Japan in specific circumstances. In traditional theatre, particularly kabuki and no performers playing historical female roles might blacken their teeth for authenticity. The makeup is temporary, applied with modern cosmetic products that are safer and easier to remove than historical ohaguro solution. Actors who have worn blackened teeth for theatrical performances describe the experience as deeply unsettling. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. The black teeth completely changed my face. It affected how I moved and spoke. I felt like I needed to be more careful, more refined because I looked so formal. The cosmetic transformation changed not just appearance but behavior and psychology, even for modern actors who knew it was just makeup. In some traditional wedding ceremonies, particularly those attempting to recreate Heian period aesthetics, brides might have their teeth blackened as part of the costume and makeup. This is purely theatrical. The blackening is done with temporary makeup, not actual ohaguro solution, and is removed immediately after the ceremony. But it allows couples to experience a version of traditional aristocratic wedding aesthetics. Historical reenactment groups sometimes include ohaguro as part of accurate costume. Members who participate describe it as one of the most challenging aspects of authentic reenactment. They can wear the heavy robes, learn the formal movements, practice the etiquette, but actually blackening their teeth even temporarily crosses a psychological threshold. Many reenactors draw the line there, maintaining costume accuracy in other ways, but keeping their teeth white. There are also occasional fashion or artistic uses. Avant-garde fashion designers or photographers might use blackened teeth as a striking visual element in editorial spreads or runway shows. In this context, the blackening is purely aesthetic shock value, disconnected from any historical or cultural meaning, just used for its strong visual impact and otherness. According to cultural studies research by Dr. Jennifer Robertson at the University of Michigan, modern Japan's relationship with its traditional aesthetic practices is complex. There is simultaneous fascination and distance. People want to preserve and understand their cultural heritage, but they don't want to actually live it. Practices like ohaguro can be appreciated as historical art or theatrical spectacle, but the idea of actually practicing them in daily life is unthinkable to modern Japanese people. Finally, let's reflect on what this 1,000-year practice teaches us about beauty, culture, and the human capacity for endurance in pursuit of social acceptance. Tooth blackening wasn't imposed by force. No one held women down and painted their teeth black. It was maintained through cultural consensus, social pressure, and the internalization of aesthetic standards that made the practice seem not just acceptable but beautiful and necessary. Women endured significant discomfort, the terrible taste, the stinging on gums, the smell, the time consumption, the health damage, because the alternative was social marginalization, reduced marriage prospects, and loss of status. The practice was voluntary only in the narrowest technical sense. The social consequences of refusal were so severe that choice was largely illusory. This raises uncomfortable questions about how much of our own behavior is truly chosen versus socially coerced. We like to think we make free aesthetic choices, but how much are we simply conforming to powerful cultural pressures that we've internalized so thoroughly we experience them as personal preference? When a modern woman undergoes painful beauty procedures, cosmetic surgery, extreme dieting, high heels that damage her feet, is this meaningfully different from Heian women blackening their teeth? The parallel isn't perfect. Modern Western women have more genuine choice than Heian aristocrats did. The social penalties for not conforming to beauty standards are generally less severe, and modern beauty procedures, while sometimes uncomfortable, are usually safer than applying acidic iron solution to teeth daily for decades. But the fundamental dynamic is similar. Women's bodies become sites where cultural ideals are enacted, often at significant personal cost. The specific practices change. Black teeth become white teeth. Natural eyebrows become plucked eyebrows. Modest dress becomes revealing dress. But the underlying pattern of women enduring discomfort to meet culturally constructed beauty standards persists across cultures and centuries. The other lesson is about the profound arbitrariness of beauty standards. There is nothing inherently beautiful about blackened teeth or white teeth, about shaved eyebrows or natural eyebrows, about any specific aesthetic feature. Beauty is almost entirely cultural construction. What seems obviously attractive or repulsive to us is the product of cultural programming that we've internalized so deeply. It feels natural and obvious. Recognizing this arbitrariness is both liberating and unsettling. Liberating because it means no one's natural appearance is objectively ugly. Ugliness is just failure to meet arbitrary cultural standards that could have been different. Unsettling because it means our own aesthetic preferences, which feel so intuitive and real, are largely arbitrary cultural constructions that we've been trained to feel. High and noble women looking at themselves in bronze mirrors saw blackened teeth and thought beautiful. We look at images of them and think bizarre, frightening, alien. Both responses are culturally programmed. Neither is more real or valid than the other. This is what it means to truly grasp cultural relativity. Not just intellectually accepting that different cultures have different standards, but viscerally understanding that your own aesthetic responses are as constructed and arbitrary as anyone else's. The final lesson is about cultural change and the fragility of practices that seem eternal. For over 1,000 years, tooth blackening was normal, essential, beautiful to Japanese aristocratic culture. Then within 2 or 3 generations, it completely vanished. The aesthetic sensibility that supported it was lost so thoroughly that even Japanese people can't intuitively access it anymore. This tells us that no matter how permanent and natural our own cultural practices seem, they're all potentially transient. In 100 or 200 years, people might look at our beauty practices, our makeup, our clothing, our body modifications, with the same incomprehension and slight revulsion that we feel looking at blackened teeth. What seems obviously attractive or appropriate to us might seem bizarre to our descendants. This isn't an argument for abandoning all beauty practices or for uncritical cultural relativism. Some practices cause more harm than others. Some serve oppressive social functions. Some perpetuate inequality or reinforce harmful hierarchies. Critical evaluation is appropriate, but it is an argument for humility about our own aesthetic judgments and for compassion toward people in other times and places whose practices seem strange to us. The Heian women who blackened their teeth weren't stupid or barbaric. They were intelligent people responding to the cultural context they inhabited, trying to achieve beauty and status within the frameworks available to them. They endured discomfort not because they were masochistic, but because the social benefits outweighed the personal costs within their specific context. We should remember them not with condescension or horror, but with recognition that we're all navigating similar dynamics, just with different specific practices. The woman in Heian period Japan painting her teeth black and the woman in contemporary America undergoing cosmetic procedures are both trying to achieve culturally valued beauty despite personal costs. The specifics differ enormously, but the human impulse to conform to beauty standards at significant personal sacrifice is universal. Sweet dreams, and may you wake tomorrow with gratitude that beauty standards evolve, with understanding that what seems bizarre to us made perfect sense within its cultural context, with recognition that every culture has practices that seem normal from inside, but strange from outside. The blackened teeth of Heian Japan were just one way humans have transformed their bodies to signal status and beauty. Remember the noble woman who endured chemical burns and social pressure to achieve an ideal that has vanished from the world, and reflect on what future generations might think of our own beauty practices. Good night. The blackened teeth of Heian Japan were just one way humans have transformed their bodies to signal status and beauty. Remember the noble woman who endured chemical burns and social pressure to achieve an ideal that has vanished from the world, and reflect on what future generations might think of our own beauty practices. Good night. The blackened teeth of Heian Japan were just one way humans have transformed their bodies to signal status and beauty. Remember the noble woman who endured chemical burns and social pressure to achieve an ideal that has vanished from the world, and reflect on what future generations might think of our own beauty practices. Good night.